All right, is our panel ready? Everybody good? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started, and we have a great session for you all today. We've got a great panel of folks who I think have a lot of wisdom to share with you. So I'm going to go into a little bit of background about our center and what we do and why we hold events like this one. We are a Lewis Stokes Regional Center of Excellence. And what that means is that we are a National Science Foundation funded center. And that is in accordance with the Lewis Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation. And each of the regional centers that's funded by the National Science Foundation has a specific focus. And our focus is to prepare historically underrepresented students in STEM for academic careers. And part of that is also helping undergrad students, if they want to go into a graduate position, pursue an advanced degree, get a PhD, help them along in that process as well. And so we have several things that we do. One is we have a mentoring program. We're building a network of mentors and mentees all across the country. So we are housed at LSU in Louisiana, but we serve people everywhere. And so to your question, Jordan, we're happy to have you. You're at Rowan, you said, and one of our mentors, Dr. Caitlin Maluk, is at Rowan. And then we also have various other connections at Rowan as well. So we serve people from all over the country. This is our leadership team. Our principal investigator is Dr. Isaiah Warner, and he is the vice president for the Office of Strategic Initiatives. We have some great co-PIs. We have Melissa Crawford, who's amazing, who you will hear from a lot today. We have some great evaluators, and we also have myself. I'm the program manager for the center, and Dr. Kristen Williams is the program coordinator for the center. A couple other things about our center. Participants in our program will have the opportunity to do the following things. And if you'd like to join, we're going to put a link in the chat. We have a new website that we've launched, and you can check out some opportunities that we have there if you'd like to join our center. So if you are interested in being mentored by folks who can help provide career guidance, skill development, if you're an undergrad, a grad student, a postdoc, or even somebody who's in a faculty position, if you're in the first 4 years of a faculty position, we support all of those different classifications. So anyone who's in any of those groups can get a mentor. And you can also be a mentor. So the way it works is we have a peer mentoring network as well. And so anyone who has a mentor can also serve as a mentor if you'd like to do that. We also have professional development courses like this one. We have several different opportunities every semester. We have opportunities to network with folks in different STEM fields to build career connections. We have a conference every year. It's usually in the summer, so we're planning one next year. Hopefully that's going to be in person, and we're going to plan that for New Orleans. It's going to be where we're going to hold that. So those are the opportunities that we have available to you. And I'm going to put in the chat a link to our website, which is just LS-PACmodels.org, and you can check that out. The specific link is lspacmodels.org/become-a-scholar, but you should be able to easily navigate to that by clicking Get Involved when you go to the website. We have some scholar orientations coming up, so if you're interested, you can go to our website and fill out our onboarding form, and that will allow you to sign up for an orientation session. We have one next Thursday, September 30th, 5 to 6 p.m. Central, and then one on Wednesday, October 13th from 12:30 to 1 p.m. Central Time. So feel free to check out our site, and you can email me as well. I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now if you have any questions at all. Finally, before we go into talking to our panel, I do just want to go over how our mentoring network works. And this is what we call our mentoring ladder. And so if you are an undergraduate student, for example, then you could mentor other undergraduate students. If you are a graduate student, you could mentor graduate and undergraduate students. If you're a postdoc, you can mentor postdocs, graduates, and undergraduate students, and so on. And then we have plenty of senior faculty as well who are mentors who can mentor anybody. So that's just a little bit about how that works. Very last thing that I'll say is we have an app and a website that we have been developing and specifically designed to facilitate connections among mentors and mentees in STEM. And that is going to be rolled out next month. And so you'll have the opportunity to participate in our beta matching process for that if you join our center. So you'll be able to log on. It is kind of like a social networking app, but it's for mentorship, and you can find mentors or mentees who you would like to work with. So all of those opportunities are available through our center. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and turn it over to Miss Melissa Crawford, and she's going to introduce our panel today.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Marco. Hello, everybody. So I am so excited to be moderating this panel of some awesome STEM leaders. And so the format, we'll have everybody introduce themselves, kind of give maybe a 1-2 minute introduction of their background and so forth. And then we have a few questions for the panel. And so we're going to kick it off with our first panelist, Dr. Treva Brown. And I'll just tell you a little bit about Dr. Brown. She is an LSU grad. She finished with her BS in chemistry from LSU, and then she went on to achieve her PhD at the University of New Orleans, also in chemistry. And she's currently working with the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory in Mississippi. And if you could advance to there we go. Thank you, Rob. And her role there, she has a passion for microscopy. And so she helps the Department of Defense gain a better understanding of organisms that cause corrosion on metal materials. And so this work ranges from basic corrosion research to external research focused on microbial populations, electrochemical data, electrochemical sensors, corrosion mechanisms, and biodegradation. She established an analytical protocol for diagnosing the possibility of microbiologically influenced corrosion of copper nickel heat exchanger samples aboard Navy ships. And she began a microbial corrosion studies related to fabric panels. One thing that I really love about Dr. Brown is her commitment to outreach and mentorship activities. She is a huge advocate. Some of you may have seen her. She's famous, y'all. Like, she's been in everything, literally, throughout the state of Louisiana and even nationally. But she does a lot of outreach. She advocates for STEM in the local community. She spearheads initiatives aimed at improving diversity and inclusion within the scientific community. She's an active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers, or NOBSHE. She's the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the Microscopy Society of America. And if that weren't enough, on a unique note, she holds the title of the 2021 Miss Black Louisiana International Ambassador. And her platform, obviously, is Yes You Can. And it's aimed at encouraging young youth and young adults to attain their goals, no matter the obstacles encountered along the way, especially in STEM. She was also recently awarded as a 2020 Best Woman in STEM. That's a series of awards that recognizes female leaders making an impact in New Orleans and the surrounding areas. And she was named one of North Shore, Louisiana's 40 under 40. Dr. Brown's mantra that she lives by is be the change you want to see in the world. And so as an unconventional scientist, she focuses on changing the narrative and faces of STEM disciplines, particularly among youth from underrepresented backgrounds. And so let us welcome Dr. Brown, or the creator of Dr. B's Science Adventures, which is one of her many outreach activities. So if you will, Dr. Brown, just share a little bit about yourself and, 1 to 2 minute background.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. First of all, I don't even know how to follow that up. That was just like an amazing just recap of everything. I even forget that I do all of that stuff. But it is such a pleasure to be here. I am always amazed at what you all are doing with our young adults that are matriculating through the same paths that I matriculated through. And I definitely know that I wouldn't be where I am today without you all's mentorship, because as Melissa and actually Dr. Williams as well can recollect, I was like one of those students that was just, I needed some guidance, y'all. I'm just saying that. I will let you all ask me questions later, but I definitely needed that mentorship and guidance, and definitely programs like this, help me navigate literally unconventional waters that I had never even seen before, never even imagined for myself, being a first generation college graduate student, and even going into graduate school and not even knowing what a PhD is. And I will not continue on because I can be here all day on the soapbox. But basically, I definitely encourage all of the students that are here to gain insight. We are here as your mentors to help you through whatever it is that you're going through, navigating graduate school, et cetera, et cetera. So please, if you can, just take every gem that you can away from this, and don't hesitate to voice opinions, reach out to us, because again, I've been there, done that. A lot of us have been there, done that, and that's what we're here for. So thank you for having me today. I'll keep it here because I can keep talking forever, but I'm looking forward to the discussion to go on today.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you. Thank you. Up next, we have Mr. Daniel D. Jesus. Did I pronounce that right, Daniel? All right. Yes. So Daniel comes to us from Puerto Rico. He's a native there, and he discovered his love for science and education at a very early age. And growing up, he worked as a tutor in science and math. He later acquired his Bachelor of Science degree in biology from the University of Puerto Rico at Calle. Did I pronounce that correctly? I took French, I'm sorry. I know I'm butchering it. But as an undergraduate, he carried out several research projects across the United States and Puerto Rico in a diversity of scientific topics such as cancer biology, environmental sciences, and ecology and evolution. He also worked as a high school bilingual teacher in advanced mathematics at the Thomas Alva Edison School in Caguas, Puerto Rico. And he served as a research mentor for students at the University of Notre Dame Environmental Research Center program. He acquired his Master of Science degree from the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology program at Texas A&M University. And as a graduate student, in addition to science topics, he focused on science education by taking several graduate courses on topics, participating in professional development programs, and he was awarded the Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching, and Learning, or CIRTL Associate, and the CIRTL Practitioner certificates. He worked as a graduate teaching assistant, teaching biology and zoology laboratory courses, and he is currently a doctoral student in the science education program in the Teaching, Learning, and Culture department at Texas A&M University. His aim is to study biology education at university level in order to improve science pedagogy in higher education. So without further ado, Daniel, take it away and share what you'd like to share as your intro.
That was some good Spanish pronunciation, I gotta say. Honestly, I'm very glad to be here with all of you. I would like to ask the people here, if you are able to, turn on your cameras. If you're able to, turn on your cameras. I wanna see you, because when I see the people that I'm talking to, I can better tailor my information. So I appreciate Chase, Liam, Colin, Jessica Rosales, thank you for turning on your cameras. So I am from Puerto Rico. I usually, what I do is I want to inspire people, because when I was growing up, a lot of the people that surrounded me, they were intimidated because they had to speak a different language. And so English is not my first language, Spanish is, but I practiced and learned English at school and professionally. And so now I feel very comfortable speaking English because I practice it so much, but that there's still that intimidation, that fear of, trying to go into a place that's similar in some ways, but different in others to the Puerto Rican culture. And so I'm always with talking to Hispanics and Puerto Ricans and any other underserved community really in the United States, so that you can see that with some practice and effort, and it's fun to practice and to better your skills, communicating the things that you like to do. So I'm gonna stop talking, but I look forward to hearing your questions and being able to address them. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Next up, we have Mr. Leo Fontaine. Leo received his bachelor's of chemistry from LSU, and afterwards he worked as a quality control chemist at Valero Energy and REG before he returned to grad school to pursue a meaningful career in research here at LSU. He is currently studying metabolomics and proteomics, I know I butchered that as well, of iron-starved bacteria with Professor Mario Rivera, and they are striving to validate iron homeostasis as a potential target for antibiotic development. So Leo, take it away. You might be on.
There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Melissa. Like she said, I'm Leo. I'm a PhD candidate here at LSU. Went here for undergrad, went to work, like she said, and now I'm back to get my PhD. Also, I'm an LS-PAC model scholar. Joined the program. It's a very good program. I love my mentor because I think I want to be an academic one day. So if you have those aspirations, please join the program. Also, active in Noble like Dr. Brown. Starting next week, I will be the National Student Representative. So if you want to start a Noble chapter at your school, if you don't have one, please reach out, let us know. And like everyone else, I'm happy to be here today. Always happy to do panels with LS-PAC models.
Thank you, Leo. Next up, we have Dr. Brandon Pitts. Dr. Pitts graduated also from LSU with his bachelor's in industrial engineering. It's not listed on here, but I'll throw it in because we will be talking about the graduate application process, graduate school application process. Dr. Pitts was also an NSF graduate research fellow, and so he may be able to share some tips on that as well. He is currently an assistant professor in the School of Industrial Engineering at Purdue University. And at Purdue, he's the director of the Next Generation Human Systems and Cognitive Engineering Lab. He's a faculty associate with the Center on Aging and the Life course. He's the co-director of the FAA Center of Excellence for Technical Training and Human Performance. And at the University of Michigan, that's where he received his master's and PhD in Industrial and Operations Engineering. Prior to his faculty appointment, he was a research fellow in the University of Michigan Center for Healthcare Engineering and Patient Safety. And his research focuses on cognitive engineering, human automation interaction, context-sensitive interface design, and geryon technology. Sorry about that, Brandy. You can correct me on that. In complex transportation and work environments, such as driving and aviation. His research has been funded by several government and industry sponsors, such as the National Science Foundation, the Federal Aviation Administration, Department of Transportation, and also Ford Motor Company. And he's a native here in the state of Louisiana. So take it away, Dr. Pitts.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Melissa. Let me start off by saying it is good to be back at home. I know we're virtual, but seeing Ms. Melissa, I see Ms. Gretchen Schneider on here. I'm seeing Dr. Kristen Williams. I'm seeing Dr. Treva Brown. Dr. Treva Brown and I have been friends since the 3rd grade. So it is really just fantastic to be back at home. August 8th of this year made 10 years that I have been out of Louisiana. And some people tell me I've lost my accent. You guys might be able to help me get it back. Anyway, I'm so glad to be here. One of the mottos that I live by is that people need to see what's possible. And I hope that in many of the environments that I walk into, I'm able to be that example to show other students what exactly is possible. It's for a lot of people, you know, being able to, if you think about the development of an aircraft, for example, the Wright brothers were sitting down looking at how birds were flying, right? And they said, well, how can we capture that? And how can we capture the energy, the physics behind how birds fly, and see if we can make that possible for a human, humankind. And so that's some inspiration for me. I'll keep this short, but I had a little bit of a non-traditional path as well. Growing up, I loved airplanes and airports, and so I thought that I wanted to be a pilot. I don't know if Miss Melissa remembers that, but that was my dream. PhD, faculty, that was not in my plans at all. I wanted to be a pilot and work for United Airlines. So I joined Dr. Warner's program as an undergrad. He introduced me in 2008 to undergraduate research at the University of Iowa, where I was supposed to work with a faculty member who was doing aviation research. Iowa City River flooded and I couldn't do that. So I ended up working with someone who was doing driver distraction research. I didn't get the chance to work on aviation research until I went to the University of Michigan. And the lady that I did the PhD with actually was a pilot. She was trained on an Airbus 321 and could tell us everything there was to know about how pilots understood information, the mistakes that they made, the type of design considerations that people at Boeing were thinking about in terms of aligning a pilot's mental model with how system designers were coming up with designs. And so it just was an amazing experience for me. So what I tell people now is that even though I never became a pilot, I am able to work on things and designs that will eventually make their way into planes, not just for the one plane that I would have been flying, but for planes all over the world. And so there's some power in that. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation. As Ms. Melissa said, I was a GRFP, and I'm happy to talk about the application process and any tips that might be beneficial to students online. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pitts. And I love that people need to see what's possible. And just a little side note, when Brandon was an undergrad in our program, I can remember he had a whole packet of quotes, beautiful quotes. You remember that? I had a little board up quote of the day. So anytime I needed a quote,
I still have them.
You still have them? I need to get a copy of that. Just so always inspirational, always. Next up, we have Miss Paris Taylor. Paris is from Opelousas, Louisiana, and she just recently received her bachelor's degree in biological sciences from LSU. And the summer of her first undergrad year, she began her research journey as an initiative for maximizing student development, or IMSD research scholar. She also worked with the LS-LAMP program, the Ronald McNair Research Scholars Program, and she conducted a lot of her research in the newcomer biochemistry and structural biology lab. Her participation in these programs is what she credits as the thing that gave her lots of opportunities to advance her career. She was able to present her research at 4 national conferences, 2 local conferences, where she has won for her presentation at some of those conferences. And she recently participated in the summer training as research scholars program at Boston University School of Medicine, where she studied a newly discovered form. And that word I'm not gonna try is amyloidosis. Help me out there, Paris. And she's currently a first-year graduate student in the Biomedical Sciences PhD program at West Virginia University Health Sciences. Welcome, Paris.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. First, I want to say I'm honored to be serving on a panel next to all you glorious people. I hope to, someday be as successful as all of you are. And it's definitely an inspiration, especially me going through my grad school. I'm very new on the block. So a year ago, I was sitting exactly in y'all's shoes right now, asking questions, trying to build my plan of attack on how to get into grad school. So I feel like I'm a great resource to talk to if anybody needs any advice, help. I know exactly what y'all are going through because I had to apply and graduate in the middle of a pandemic too. And it was truly unique. But I mean, I'm rolling with it, and yeah.
Thank you, Paris. So we are going to jump right into it, you guys. We have so many questions to ask this panel. And as you can tell, I know already they are so knowledgeable about this field. So I don't know if you're like me, I always take notes. I actually jotted down notes as people were talking. So I encourage you, whenever you participate in opportunities like this, keep a pen and pad handy. You know, you're not going to remember everything. So if you want to just take a moment, if you don't have a notebook, go grab a pen and paper, because I am pretty sure that there's going to be something that will be said today that you will want to write down. Yes, we are recording it, but I'll give you just a minute to do that as we transition into the questions. All right. So the first question that we will ask, and it's going to just be, and they've already been given the questions ahead of time, and so just feel free to jump in and share based on what question kind of resonates best with you. But what were some of the things that you all wish you had known when you were applying to graduate school? What were some of those things? From the panelists. Daniel, I see you.
I wish I knew that picking the right PI, in other words, the right mentor, the lab manager, the person that holds the research, is so important. Honestly, when you're looking for things that you're interested, so first step is you say, okay, so these topics are the ones that I'm most interested in. So let me go on Google, literally, and you Google the topics and universities that usually that have that type of research going on. But the next step should be your priority is learning about the people that are the PIs, the mentors in those labs. Because once you enter into that lab, it's a very important relationship that you will have with that person. And don't be intimidated, but just have in mind that knowing about that person is important. And so a last recommendation that I could give you is if you go into the laboratory, say for a topic in biology, and you found a laboratory and they work with butterflies or with things that you're interested in, and you say, okay, so this person is working with this topic that I am interested in. Let me ask the graduate students already in the lab. And so I would email them and say, hey, I'm considering talking to your PI. What are some general knowledge that you can give me relating to that person's style, both in mentoring and in teaching as well, and that you can have a better idea. So my recommendation, to sum it up, is the mentor that you will have working in a lab is very important, knowing about that person. So one way that you can find out more about that person is asking the graduate students. Usually they're very honest, and that's what you want, for good or for bad, because it's good to know beforehand how that person works.
That is great. Thank you, Daniel. Great advice. Anyone else? Any other panels?
I can talk about this. I wish I would have known how important the structure of the program is, because what I didn't realize is that there's many different ways that people could structure a program, and I was very, very lucky to end up where I am now because it aligns with my interests perfectly. Like, I'm very interested in translational research and also cross-disciplinary research. And for example, where I'm at WVU, they have an umbrella program where you come in as an undecided biomedical science PhD student, and you get the opportunity to rotate with any of the available PIs that are across 7 different disciplines. And just being able to really go in completely undecided and really talk about something different disciplines with different people and like get a taste for some research that you never had before. I feel like it's been very great and very eye-opening, and you get a chance to see like what your actual passion is, because no matter what research you have to be interested in it enough to formulate the questions that you need to and actually continue with the PhD, because I mean that's going to take a long time. So being able to really test the waters of a lot of different disciplines and being in the program that really strives to have a lot of connection between the disciplines and not just one specific thing that you're dedicated to is very, very helpful, especially if you have a lot of different interests. So I would definitely recommend looking into umbrella type programs.
Okay. Thank you, Paris. Anybody else?
I would like to add a little bit more to Daniel's point. So he was talking about the mentors being with that person for your whole time. But I think a good question to ask would be if this person has availability for students in their lab, because oftentimes students apply to programs, one, to work with a certain person, and then they get there, the professor may be retiring or not accepting students that year. And then you haven't opened your options at that, specific university. So you're like, who else do I work for? And then, it goes from there. So if you have someone specific that you want to work with, please make sure that they have availability to accept you if you are admitted to the program.
That's great. Great advice. Great advice. Especially that retirement part. You definitely will want to know if your advisor is approaching retirement before committing. So thank you for that. Anyone else on that question? Things you wish you would have known when applying to grad school? All right. So moving to the next one. So we talk about, looking at the advisor and talking to the graduate students, but specifically when we're dealing with the graduate students of color, is there something that graduate students of color should look for in a graduate school? And what should graduate students of color look for in a potential research mentor? Anybody want to add to that? Because it's a little bit different, right? Our experiences are going to be different. So what are some of those things as graduate students of color that we should be looking for?
I guess I'll start off, but I can tell you that when I did this 11 years ago, the world has changed. I mean, in light of several national social justice issues, and everyone on here probably knows what I'm talking about. What I can see is that a lot of universities are, whether we like it or not, are actually thinking more critically about diversity and making sure that that's included in pamphlets and job advertisements and graduate school advertisements. Whereas I got to be honest, 11 years ago, we might have seen it, but it seemed like an afterthought. And so I think I'll start this off, but someone who's done this much more recently than me should actually comment on this as well. I think you should be looking at the mission statement of departments, of schools, right? Colleges and departments, to see what is their stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if they don't say anything at all, I think that's pretty telling. So that's number one. I mentioned that the person that I did my PhD with was a woman, and I remember intentionally wanting to work with her because I thought she would be sensitive to diversity issues, and that ended up working out. I don't think students should be shy. So there are some universities that do require now a diversity statement. I never had to write one, but I'm seeing the students that are applying to our program, they are writing a one-page diversity statement, basically talking about why diversity is important to them and what are the initiatives they've been involved in previously to support a more diverse climate. And so once you have applied to the school and you've gotten an invitation to maybe visit the campus, I think these conversations should actually be had with your potential mentor. I would not shy away from that and think that that's going to somehow cast you out or things might be uncomfortable. I would be very forthcoming with those types of questions. So
That's good. Thank you, Dr. Pitts. Anyone else want to add to that?
When I first started, so I started out as a PhD in ecology and evolution, and I ended up with a master's because I wanted to do the transition to science education. But with that first phase of ecology and evolution, the first mentor that I had was an old white lady, but she had a lot of experience with Spanish, and she went a lot to Mexico, and so she spoke a little bit of Spanish, and so that made me feel, you know, a little bit. She ended up asking me for references in Spanish. Hey, can you help me out with this translation? Things like that. And my co-advisor, he had a research station in Mexico, so he had been there for a decade and a half, and so he speaks Spanish fluently. So whenever my brain was fried with English, like I could switch over to Spanish and talk. But if you don't have necessarily that situation, that same context, still the exposure to the exposure that person has had with other types of people really helps out, I think, in my experience. So if you have a PI in mind, a mentor, you say, I'm interested in his or her research, and they usually have a lot of different people in their laboratory, people from even international people, that helps out. It really, that exposure, in my experience, is very helpful in how they handle things.
Thank you. Anybody else? What should you look for? And it may be beyond the research mentor, right? So Daniel mentioned getting with some of the graduate students. So what are things that you could maybe observe or look at in terms of the culture of the lab, or, you know, the graduate students that particular faculty has in their lab? Like, can that give you an indication of how a student of color might navigate? Are there other things you can look for? Yes, Dr. Brown.
Okay, so I'm gonna chime in here. I was trying to keep my quiet for so long. So again, I'm definitely unconventional, and LSU definitely toughened my skin. So I probably do a lot of stuff that y'all probably be like, but no, Dr. Brown, that's not how we do it. But you know, I'm going to just put it out there. A lot of, you know, we're still in the minority, be it, you know, African-American, Hispanic, female, young, brown, yellow, whatever it is. We're still in the minority. So a lot of times, you know, you're not going to find any place that's going to have a lot of people that look like you. And that was the case for me. I went to a graduate program where I was one of 3. And Dr. Williams can chime in on that. You know, she was the person that I went to when I was like, girl, look, I got a vent. So, you know, I would say in those particular situations, you have to look outside of the box. You have to definitely think unconventionally. So you have to look for resources. I saw Dr. Schneider post in the chat. Look for student organizations. Look for things in the surrounding community where, you know, you can, you know, have, you know, persons that look like you that you can vent to, because a lot of the times you're not going to walk into a place and see, you know, okay, there's other people that look like me. I went to, when I was applying for grad school, one of the graduate schools that I went to, I saw no one at all, not even on pictures, that looked like me. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if this is gonna work. So, you know, I would definitely say that that's not something that should deter you from going into a program, but, you know, that also kind of goes into the other question that's attached to the one that was presented about, you know, the mentor, the research mentor that you're gonna have. You know, you definitely want to see their stance in, you know, diversity issues, race issues, the way that they're gonna put you out there as their student. You know, and so like for me in undergrad, I had a female undergraduate research professor who was phenomenal. She took me under her wing and she put me out there. And, you know, and people would say, you know, well, she's, you know, putting you out there because you're just her token African-American student. I will take it. I will fly with it because it got me where I am. So, you know, all of that stuff, you can't let it sit and or resonate with you. You know, you definitely take every opportunity, you know, come with may, but it takes who, you know, where you surround yourself. So, you know, like I had a very strong cohort of supporters and mentors. Melissa, Gretchen, Kristen, they are all still my mentors, even though I'm Dr. Brown now. So definitely surrounding yourself with the right mentors if you don't have the particular conditions into play, like, you know, some of the other panelists were saying, you know, look for, you know, a place that has, you know, a diverse background, or look for a research mentor with diverse backgrounds. If you end up in a situation that is just not conducive to what you have going on, your mentors and your support system gets you a very long way. And I'm going to get off my soapbox.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Actually, can I add? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Go for it, Paris. Oh.
Okay. Sorry, this will be quick, but I completely agree. I completely understand what Dr. Brown was saying, because just like she was that one of three, I'm now that one of three. Because I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, I expect nothing, like no less, because I did come to school in the middle of the mountains. So it's one thing that, you know, you have to also establish that support system, like your home-based support system and other support systems, just in case you have to be that one and you don't have people that look like you. Because every school had to start somewhere, and you might just have to be that person that drives forth the diversity. Like right now, I'm one of only three, and I'm also one of only two people from the South. So now I'm working with my science program to reach more groups, more diverse groups to for recruitment. So don't let that shy away if you do see only two other people that look like you, because even though those two people look like you might find a community in a lot of other people that don't look like you, but they have the same experience as you. They see things in the same light as you. So just don't let that shy away that you don't find anybody that look like you, because you can be that person that will make the environment more inclusive for those to come.
That is awesome. Thank you, Paris. As you were talking, I was reminded of the scene in the movie Hidden Figures, with the role that Janelle Monáe played. She played Mary Jackson, and it was a beautiful scene where she was trying to get into school and she would be the first. And basically the whole premise was that somebody has to be the first, right? And so I appreciate your insight on that, Paris. Dr. Pitts.
Yeah, I wanted to say, and this actually is coming up in another question about work-life balance, but one of the things you might think about is the actual location, you know, for which you go to graduate school. So I left Louisiana and went to Michigan. And some of the reason I wanted to go to Ann Arbor was because Detroit was like 35 minutes down the street. And for people who are not familiar with Michigan, Detroit is about 80% Black. And so I thought that would feel like a New Orleans or a Baton Rouge, and it in fact did. And so that was important for me because, you know, Dr. Brown and Paris, they talk about being number three of, you know, one of three. I was one of two. And this is in a program that is number 2 in the country for industrial engineering. And so it was important for me to, yes, have my support groups at Michigan. There were a number of minority organizations, but then I also needed a community outside of Ann Arbor. And for me, that was Detroit. And I gotta tell you, you know, there are some lifelong relationships that I built. I'm not there anymore. I'm 4 hours away from there, but there are lifelong relationships I built, just like people in undergrad. And so I think people should be intentional about thinking about location too. Yes, it's 4 or 5 years, maybe 6. But if that's something that you feel that you need, then you might be thinking about where those schools are, you know, what areas those are in, and how do you position yourself to get in there.
That is wonderful. And it's actually a great segue, Dr. Pitts, to the next question. And many of you have touched on it already. So if anybody else wants to elaborate, but talking about those support systems, several of you mentioned that. And so for those of you who haven't, if you want to speak a little bit more about that, what kind of support system you have and how did that play a role in your grad life? And Dr. Pitts just gave us an example of how it may not be your traditional idea of a support system, but just having a city that feels like home, you know, knowing where to go to get your hair done or to buy beauty supplies and things like that are important. And so what did you guys' support system, what did that look like? And how did it play a role in your life as a grad student?
I can start.
Go ahead.
You know, like Dr. Pitts was mentioning, guys, when we move to a different place to study, to work, most times what we end up missing the most is community, because we lose community when we move from the place that we grew up into a different place. It could look similar to where you grew up, but the people are not the same. And so regarding that, missing the community that you have at the new place, one of the things that we can definitely do is, like Gretchen Schneider added in the chat, the student organizations. So I hang out with a lot of Hispanics, not only Hispanic, all types of people, but just being able to speak. And I always come back to that because language is so, you know, deeply ingrained into my culture, that hanging out with Spanish speaking people feels like community to me. And so that community, and also I know that once you start a PhD or any graduate program, you're like, okay, let's work. I want to do research. I want to take out the classes. I want to do everything. But something that you also have to do is you be your own support system and stay healthy. You gotta exercise. You gotta say yes to those social events. You gotta meet people, because then you feel right about yourself. You look good, you stay healthy, you eat right. The chemicals inside of your body are making you feel good. And that's also supportive of yourself. It's but it works. So both build community in the place that you're visiting, be it through student organizations, through saying yes to the social events, and also by yourself. You be your own support system by staying healthy, exercise, go out, eat healthily. Okay? So those are my recommendations for support systems.
Thank you. I love that. Be your own support system, right? Sometimes we don't think about that. We think about support systems outside of ourselves. So thank you, Daniel, for bringing it home. You know, we got to take care of self first and foremost. We're our number one support system, right? So thank you for that. Anybody else? Go ahead, Paris.
So I know that, so when I came here, during our orientation, we had different speakers come, and our health sciences program, it encompasses med school, dental school, PhD program, and nursing school. They have a specific counseling office. Now, I've never been to a counselor, but I know myself just as well as many of everybody else probably can, you know, resonate with this. I've gone through my own mental health struggles, and I feel like being a minority, we're taught more to put our mental health to the side and to not pay as close of attention to it, and just, you know, just leave it there and be strong. But you know, you never know what kind of mental health struggles you can go through during this time, because it's going to be one of the hardest times of your life. So one step that I took was, even though I had never been to counseling, I'm fine. Like, you know, right now, I communicated with the counselor. I set up an appointment and just talked to her, get to know her, so that we can develop a strategy of meeting every once in a while, just to make sure I'm maintaining my health, because this is a huge transition. And she's there for if something happens, if I fall, if I need help. So just building that connection that, you know, you would never think about. Like, you would never think, oh, like, I don't need a counselor, and just think about it as I'll go see a counselor if I need it. But taking that extra step to make it more of a preventative measure and adding that person to your support system, it's really helped. It's really helpful. And like, it could be 30 minutes a day just to check in, just to make sure, like, you know, you're transitioning well, you have someone to talk to. If I need to vent, I know I can email her and be like, hey, can we have a meeting? But yeah, just taking that extra step and looking at actually the resources and using the resources that are put there for you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Paris. Mental health is
Yeah.
so important. Anyone else? Dr. Brown.
Okay. So again, that non-conventional side of me, and Leo is gonna not thank me later, but I'm gonna pull him in on this as well. But being that Leo and I didn't leave home pretty much, you know, it was a little easier for us. But I will say, in just me moving down the road to New Orleans, like, that was a significant change for me personally. And I see Melissa shaking her head because she's like, yes, I remember, I know. So for me, building that self-love outlet, kind of like Dr. De Jesus was saying, like, because when I tell y'all, every second that I had to come home, I know everybody can't do that because everybody is not an hour away like I was, but every second that I had to go home to my family, that's what did it for me. I was perfectly fine. You know, I would take that hour home, I would go sit up under my mom and dad, and I'll be great. But then when I got tired of driving, see, this is what happens being in a place like New Orleans. Don't judge me. So you get engrossed in all of the creativity that New Orleans has to offer, you know? So, you know, being Mardi Gras, you know, marching in parades, you know, making jewelry, building a business around that, you know, all that stuff. You know, I always tell people, you know, yes, I was in grad school. No, maybe I didn't really, you know, get into my studies early on like I should have. I'm a very transparent person. But it was all good mental health. So I'm saying all that to say it is okay to find something that helps you get over the stress of grad school, because it is stressful. Trust me, I grew a gray hair right here in grad school. So, you know, being able to find that good balance that works for you. And I also wanted to say, in saying that with Leo and I, we, you know, with us being pretty much close to home, it is okay if you do stay close to wherever you are. You know, you don't have to always go away to do what it is that you want to do. For me, my priority was family. You know, and I've talked to several students where they felt like, you know, they had to go off, you know, miles and miles and miles away to, you know, I guess for lack of better terms, make something of themselves. And you really don't. You know, it's all about the work that you put into it and how you make, you know, whatever it is that you're going into work for you. So, you know, I got the opportunity to go on a fellowship just right down the road. That was perfect enough for me. But I have, my heartstrings are tied to Louisiana. Like, I don't know why, but they're tied to Louisiana. So don't ever make yourself feel bad about, you know, staying where you are, or what your priorities are. You know, if you want to stay close to home, you know, great, fine. And I also wanted to say that, you know, even though I was an hour down the road, you know, it was tough because I was pulled out of my comfort zone. So that's a whole nother thing. You know, when you're pulled out of your comfort zone, being able to, you know, find those mentors or that support system that, you know, basically pat you on your shoulder. It's like, it's okay. You know, we understand you're out of your comfort zone. But, you know, in that support system, find people that are there to cheer you on in your lowest of lows and your highest of highs. You know, like, my support system has been like 10 plus years or so in the running. You know, you definitely want to find those persons that, you know, are going to say, you know, hey, you know, it's great that you achieved XYZ, or hey, look, partying a little too much in New Orleans. I need you to get it back together because I got a lot of that too. But it's good to have that support system. Never let anyone make you feel bad about what it is that you choose to do for your mental health, because I had a lot of people that did that to me as well. When I was, making my jewelry and doing my jewelry stuff on the side, or when I was dancing and doing everything else on the side, my work still got done. I was fine in the end, but it was easy to let those people get in my head, and I would be like, well, maybe I'm not focused enough. Maybe I should do, blah, blah, blah. So all in all, saying, do what's best for you. Think about yourself, what's best for you, and then definitely have that support system that's like, it's okay if you're on cloud 9, but it's also okay if you're not on cloud 9. So that's my piece.
That is awesome. Awesome. Thank you. And I love that you brought up the point of just knowing your priorities. That's so important. So we're talking about a lot, like choosing a mentor and, getting that support system together, think about the location and all of those things. But I think even before that, and we'll get into it in the next week's webinar, that's more of an informational, but what are your values? What do you want to do? What are those priorities? Because that's going to drive all of the rest of those choices. And so take some time to really reflect on what's important, is having that place away from home, like being in a Detroit type place that feels like home. Is that the most important thing? Dr. Brown mentioned family, and she's right. Just her going up the road, that was definitely outside of her comfort zone. I know that firsthand. She was like, everything was in Baton Rouge area, right? So for her to do that, that was a big step. And so she was still able to challenge herself, but still have what's most important to her, which is her family right up the road. And so thank you, Dr. Brown, for pointing that out, that it's okay as long as it's what you choose and it's what's best for you and not what people feel is best for you. That's what matters most, because you have to live with that decision, right? You have to be in that place for 5 to 7 years. And so make sure that you do it based on what your needs are. So thank you. Anyone else want to add to that last piece before we transition to the next question?
Yeah, I'll add one last thing. So in addition to like student orgs and immersing yourself into the community, I think one of the easiest support systems you can build are with the people that come in the program with you. So I always, try to mention this and preach this to the incoming students that they need each other. So I think this is one of the strongest things, because y'all can go down swinging with each other, hold each other up, want to take a lick, and let somebody else hold you back while you take yours. So make friends, study together, help each other practice and talks and things like that. And also look for a lab that you can join that feels like community. If you see the lab getting along well with each other, that would probably be a good lab to join. So I just wanted to add that before we move on.
Thank you, Leo. That is very important. So next, Dr. Brown did talk about it a little bit, stress management, but we can expand it a little bit. I'm curious to know what you guys like to do outside of working on your degrees. And for those who have graduated, like, what are some of the things, what was your outlet? What did you guys do for fun? What was that stress reliever that you engaged in while in school?
All right, so I'll start off. So one of the things that people who know me on the call may not know about me is that I did not go out a lot in undergrad. I got to be very honest. I was somebody who was just very focused on getting into grad school, getting good grades, blah, blah, blah. So when I got to grad school, I remember thinking that I had missed out a little bit on some of the undergrad experience. So what does that mean? I just started going out, right? I started going out. But as Dr. Brown said, you need that because grad school is a very stressful time. I don't know if there was going to be a question about work-life balance, but let me kind of insert that in here.
There will be, but you can go ahead.
Okay, one of the things that I found is that you have got to, just like you schedule meetings and when you're going to do your homework and when you're going to meet this person, you've got to schedule social time. And if that meant that like a month from now, I needed to say, we're going to go out to some nightclub in Detroit, that needed to be on the calendar, just like an exam, right? And you shouldn't feel bad about that.
Yes.
some other things that I found out about myself is that I like to host. Maybe that's just being from Louisiana, right? We have crawfish boils and, you know, Mardi Gras fiestas. And so I realized that it was nothing for me. The very first event that I hosted in grad school was a Super Bowl party. And my very first year, a Super Bowl party, and then the Olympics, which is summer 2012. And I didn't think I knew a lot of people at the time, but my apartment was packed at the time, right? And so, but I learned that about myself. And every place that I've moved since, every apartment I've had, every, you know, different city I've lived in, I have somehow managed to always have a barbecue grill and be able to host something. So those are some of the things I like to do for fun. I also, as a hobby at LSU, I used to do a lot of swimming. When I got to Michigan, it was the same. It was a lot colder there, but I still, you know, stuck my neck out and made sure to get my fitness, as Daniel mentioned. And then one thing that hasn't come up in terms of community and kind of finding a work-life balance is a lot of people on here are religious. And so another thing about Detroit for me was that there were a number of Black churches there, right? And of all kinds of different denominations. And so, you know, going to Northern Michigan on a camping trip with the young adult ministry at the church that I was a part of, right? It's really trying to be creative and not think that grad school is all work and no fun, but being intentional about scheduling time for the fun. So I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Oh,
Daniel.
you know, growing up, my principal job was being a musician. And so when I moved to Texas, I haven't met any other Caribbean music players here. So I used music as a way to vent, as a way to canalize all my energies. So I'm going to show you something. This is off script, but
Yeah.
I'll show you what I used as a ventilation mechanism. So
Ooh,
I have an electronic drum set that I use to record music here. And so I use that pretty much every month. I sat down and I recorded videos and I uploaded them to YouTube just for fun. And so here's an example that I record music and I load it and I have friends, hey, that's cool, let me. And so if you have a hobby, really, and so I didn't have any other musicians here, but if you have a hobby, make an effort so that you have access to that.
That's nice.
So
drop
that
your
really
YouTube channel in the chat, Daniel.
Oh, it's just my name.
It's just okay, awesome.
It's
So
just my name. I have a lot of drum covers there and some educational videos as well for other presentations similar to this one that I've done.
Awesome.
So feel free to. The plug wasn't intentional, but
that's okay. I'll go subscribe. Y'all like and subscribe to Daniel's channel. I love it. And so we want to leave some time for you guys to ask questions. And we've already touched a little bit on the work-life balance. So I think for the last formal question before we open it up, we're going to talk a little bit about the financial piece, because we talked a lot about the stress management, finding the mentors and things like that. But as you guys may or may not know, when you go to grad school, in STEM specifically, you get paid to go. Like you should not have to take out loans and things like that. Like typically that is covered either through a fellowship, assistantship, and some sort of stipend where you will get paid to go to grad school. And so in that, now you're not going to be making, you know, $60K a year. However, it is enough to live off of if managed properly. And so can you guys talk a little bit about how you manage your finances? And if you did receive some sort of fellowship or award, you know, you can kind of share what that is just so they can throw that out there as well to kind of see what's out there, what kind of money's out there as well.
I haven't been in here long, so I'm just gonna put my small piece in first before y'all start giving the real spill. But one thing, when you're applying and like you're looking at where you want to go, make sure you look at the stipend that they're giving you and the cost of living in that area. Because I really wanted to go to Boston University. Like, ask anybody. I was going to Boston. Boston was given the same stipend that I get at West Virginia, and the living difference is very, very big. Okay, so just make sure like you're looking at how livable that stipend is, and also make sure you know how guaranteed is it. From my program, for example, the grad office gives it for the first 2 to 3 years, and then the PI supplies it. But if something were to go wrong where the PI couldn't supply it, the grad office is still going to supply it. So like my money is guaranteed the whole time. But some grad programs aren't like that. So just keep that in mind when you're applying.
Thank you, parents. Anybody else? Dr.
Okay. So coming from an only child that was spoiled, living in the South, let me tell y'all, it wasn't enough. It was enough, it wasn't enough. But real talk. So, again, I honestly wasn't even looking for a fellowship. I wish I would have had this call before I applied to grad school, because I literally started applying to grad school a little blindly, not too blindly, because I did have the help of this program to help me through it. But I just really didn't know, I guess, to think about, the cost of living places, or, how much money would you actually be getting, in specific programs, or to even look into how much money you would be getting in specific programs. And I actually chose University of New Orleans because they approached me and they were like, we want to award you with the Board of Regents Fellowship. I didn't know what the Board of Regents Fellowship was at the time, but for anyone who may be on a call that is looking for a fellowship outside of the other ones that are widely known, Board of Regents, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, I think Board of Regents is only for Louisiana graduate schools. I can't remember precisely. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Board of Regents is only for schools in Louisiana, which, again, if you're like myself and you really don't want to go that far anyway, that is something to look forward to. Everybody likes numbers. Even when I do my outreach, my little kids are like, how much you get paid? So how much you get paid is at the time, and it could have changed since then. I'm not gonna tell my age, but since then, it was, I think it was like 30,000, which was like, let me tell y'all, that was like you were balling, okay? If you were getting 30,000 in grad school, you were like, score. So that was like amazing in grad school. Some of y'all were like, wait, 30,000. But I will tell you, as a teaching assistant, which is what you will get paid for in grad school, being a teaching assistant, if your PI can't take you on as a research assistant, you only get like 18 to 20,000. Okay. So yeah, let's put that in perspective. So, you really do have to do your checks and balances. Again, if you're like me and you're like, I don't want no roommate, I'm trying to live my best life being by myself. Yeah, got to take that into perspective too. So you got to take into perspective, yes, your cost of living. Are you going to be able to handle the workload of, being, teaching, if you have to teach, and doing your research? Because I know a lot of my colleagues, that's kind of where they were super frustrated with that. So, a lot of that is, what you can take into consideration. Now, see, all my friends gonna throw me under the bus after this call, because now I'm going to call on Dr. Pitts, because I want him to talk a little bit more about the NSF Fellowship.
Dr. Pitts has left the conversation.
Not left the conversation. He going to give these students what they need today, okay?
All right, well, let me start off. Let me say this. This is definitely a topic I don't think is discussed enough, because, so just let me start here. For 5 years of grad school, I was not saving for retirement. So Dr. Brown, were they talking to you about saving for retirement? Dr. Williams, were they talking to you about saving for retirement?
Didn't even know you could do that.
You did, right? You didn't know that that was a thing. So all of my friends who had gotten a bachelor's degree and started working in some engineering plants, you know, they were 5 years ahead of me in terms of whatever kind of retirement fund they had. So that was something that was not even thought of. You know, a lot of these fellowships are taxed. So at the time, 2009, 2010, the GRFP was 30,000. I don't know what it is now, but I know it's gone up.
Or 40.
Oh, wow. Are you
About
serious?
40, yeah. And that's not including all of the, yes, perks.
Woo, man. So yeah. So I mean, but there's been inflation, right? I mean, 2010 would look different than what 2021 looks like. Okay, so there's retirement, there's taxes, there is unexpected car repairs, right? I had a car that was like 3 years old. So by the time I got to the north and they were putting salt all over the roads to melt the snow, right? Then there were things underneath my car that were eaten up that needed to be replaced, right?
Yes.
You know, Dr. Brown mentioned a roommate. For some people that works, for some people it doesn't. For me, it didn't. So one of my strategies was to kind of move a little bit further away from the campus. And it was still in the city, but I did, you know, I had a car, so I didn't mind driving 15 minutes, 20 minutes into campus. So you might need to think about that, a strategy like that. Another thing to be mindful of is for a lot of the traveling, I would say probably 80% of the traveling that I did in grad school was paid for by the university. And what I mean is a lot of graduate schools and graduate programs have some kind of travel fellowships where if you need to present your research, they'll pay, if not all of it, the majority of it. So you might want to be smart about, okay, there's this conference in Seattle. I've always wanted to go to Seattle. So, you know, book your trip for the 4 days and then extend it another day or two, right? And leverage that opportunity. So you really do have to be wise with your finances. There is no formula per se. I mean, if a financial advisor on here, they may say something differently. But to me, no one strategy works for everybody. It really depends on who you are, how you spend, what you think you need. You know, and the list goes on and on, but finances is something you definitely have to be mindful of. What I would tell you is whatever amount of money you're getting, just make sure that you're spending less than that per month. I mean, that's vague advice, but I think that's the best I can tell you. Make sure that you're underspending and that each month you certainly see, you know, a surplus that each month it's growing. And you might even take some of that and put it into a savings account that's got interest on it. Don't just leave it in a checking account that may be growing like one cent per month, right? I will move that into a savings account that's got some significant interest on it.
That's good.
So I'm not sure if that's good, but that's the advice I've got.
I think that's good, but I think what Dr. Brown was speaking more specifically on in your NSF fellowship, and we had a webinar about, you know, we'll have applying for fellowships, but can you just do a quick plug for the importance of just going for those fellowships? Because sometimes students of color can feel like, you know, I don't know if I'll get the fellowship. They may not feel like they're competitive, or they may be discouraged. Like I know your personal story, Brandon, with the NSF fellowship and some of the obstacles that you had to face and naysayer, you know, if you want to just share and encourage the folks on here to apply. You can't win if you don't apply, right? That's right. If you want to shed some light on that, because getting a fellowship can make all the difference. And as Dr. Brown said, an assistantship, not to knock an assistantship, is great. But if you can get a fellowship and essentially almost double your money, why not?
Yeah, so double your money and work on what you want to work on, right? So those fellowships, you are not attached to an advisor. And in fact, that's awesome for a PI, right? Because they're like, okay, well, you come with me and you don't have to kind of divide your attention working on multiple projects, which is awesome. What I want to say is, yes, you know, some people struggle with imposter syndrome. Sometimes you look at the list of people who won these awards before and you say, oh, I'm not even in that league. But I'm telling you, you got to get that out of your thinking. You got to get that out of your line of thinking. I don't know if Dr. Maribeth Lima still hosts. When I was interested in this fellowship, she was hosting an annual workshop on the, is she still
Yes, we
hosting
still
that?
have them. She's not hosting them, but it has transitioned with ORED and also OSI. We partnered and some other units on campus, and it's actually going on right now. We just had the
Okay.
third workshop this past week, so we have
Okay.
one more.
So here's the advice I want to give you. If there's a fellowship that looks attractive and it looks like you're in terms of eligibility, you fit the criteria, go for it. Don't have a single thought that, oh, I'm not competitive enough. Because let me tell you something, the GRE was removed from the NSF GRFP the year that I applied. And I'm telling you, that was an act of God, I promise, okay? Just trust me, we won't, time won't get, right? And so, I mean, literally, I had senior faculty saying like, oh, if you didn't have like a 1250 on the GRE, a 1300 on the GRE, you might as well forget about GRFP, right? I had the dean of a college, I'm not gonna say which one, I had the dean of a college who told me that I wouldn't get into Michigan without a certain GRE score, okay? Yep. And so when people are planting those kind of seeds, don't give any water to that. What I do wanna tell you is, so look at the description of the fellowship, look at your eligibility, right? A lot of these do say that they encourage URM, underrepresented minority students to apply. And what I have found, the people who are most successful can do a few things. First, they can talk about how who they are is reflected in what they're doing. Okay, what's hard for somebody who's reviewing these fellowships to digest is if you say, here's my background, and then you put together a proposed research statement that has nothing to do with your background, what you've done, what you're interested in. So the ones that I've seen be successful are ones that say, here is who I am, here's how I grew up, here is what I was interested in, here's the undergrad research that I've done. And then now, even if you're not continuing that exact line of research, you need to talk intelligently about how what you've learned or not learned from that previous research experience is kind of propelling you to this proposed research idea you've got. They are not looking for people to have the best idea or one that they think is going to be 100% successful, but they've got to see that you're excited about the work and that you're able to tell kind of a compelling story about who you are, what you've done, and how those two things manifest in what it is you're proposing to do. And I promise you, if you can articulate that, that is 80% of it. Okay, outside of GRE scores, outside of GPA, I have actually, I don't know if Ms. Melissa knows this, but I have actually now served on the GRFP panel since being a faculty member here. So I have had conversations with reviewers to know what they're looking for. And I promise you, it's not what you think. We are not filtering applications by who's up at the top. So you've got to really be able to tell a compelling story, start early, utilize your resources on campus, reach out to me. I'm happy to give my email address. But the first thing, you've got to get in your mind that you can do it, regardless of what other people tell you, what doubts you have in yourself. It can happen.
Thank you. That is awesome. And congratulations on that full circle moment, having gone through that process and now you're a reviewer for the fellowship that you won. That is amazing. That is amazing. Anybody else on that topic before we open it up for general Q&A? Yes, Dr. Brown.
I just want to piggyback on Dr. Pitts. So Dr. Pitts, yes, that's why I called on you, by the way. But anyway, so I do want to say that, yes, like I am definitely a product of what Dr. Pitts just said. Like I did not have the most favorable GPA. I will tell you that, but I want you all to be better than me, so I won't tell you what it was. But my undergraduate research spoke for itself. Like when you put me in the lab, I was... I soared with flying colors. Okay. So, my undergraduate research spoke for me. So, definitely, figure out what it is that you can put into that story that Dr. Pitts was talking about. Like for me, it was about, the background that I came from, going into literally being taken under someone's wing, doing my undergraduate research and what I wanted to do with that research and beyond. And literally what I'm doing now is what I already manifested in that, personal statement that I put in for the for the fellowship. So don't harp on like, oh my goodness, my GPA has to be this or I got to do that. Like, no, you be your authentic self, and literally, like Dr. Pitt said, that's what they're looking for. So
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Brown. From an academic side, you may not have the highest GPA, but as she stated, you're going to highlight what your strengths are and recognizing that they're not just looking at that one thing, they're looking at a total package. And so, you know, where you shine a light on where you shine, right? And so that's, you know, she didn't say this, but Dr. Brown was also a published author as an undergrad. She had a publication, okay? And so that was an understatement to say she shined in research as an undergraduate. She killed it. You know, she literally killed it. And so take that, you know, use that to your advantage to create your story. So you may not have that 4.0, that 3.5, that 3.0. You might have less than that. But where you can win and stand out, because it's talking about standing out, is in those areas where you can. So if it's research, you just be the best researcher that you can be, okay? So with that, first of all, I'm trying not to get emotional because, you know, for three of you, for sure, I know you guys like personally and just watch y'all go through this process. So for me, this is just totally warmed my heart. And I thank you guys for your time. I thank you for being transparent and sharing all of this information. You guys, y'all had 5 rock stars on this call, drop some serious gems. Okay, so let's just give them a hand real quick, virtual hand, physical hand, whatever, hand clap. Thank y'all for answering the questions. But at this time, we want to hear from you. So maybe there's a pressing question that you want to know more about. Maybe or you want them to elaborate on some things that we've talked about. So if you could either drop it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. All right. So who has a question for our panel? You can direct it in general, or if you have a specific question for a specific panelist, feel free to ask that as well. Anybody?
What was your book about, Miss Brown?
My book?
Yes.
So she's so cute. She's like, what was your book about? I'm like, I got to think about which one you're talking about. So I contributed to an anthology, and so it was a Christian-based piece for women, and mine was called Faith Over Fear, because for those who know me, literally everything that I did was led by my faith. Faith is definitely a word that is a part of my daily mantra, because, you know, I literally could not see the end of the road. It took my mentors and people that were in my corner to see the end of the road for me, if that made sense. And so every time that I wanted to throw in a towel and say, you know what, I can't do this, it's too hard. Like literally, I just felt like, and I'm gonna just go ahead and put it out there, I felt like God just put somebody in my path to redirect me, or, you know, basically remind me, look, I have a reason that you're going through all of this. And like now, being in the position that I'm in, I definitely look back now and I'm like, well, if I would have stopped back then, I wouldn't be where I am now. So, you know, that fear was definitely trumped by my faith. And so the part that I shared in this particular anthology was about faith over fear. So I hope that was the book you were talking about, because I also have like research science publications and things out there like that. But yeah, I hope that answered your question, Sarah.
All right. And thank you, Dr. Pitts, for answering Chase's question about applying. If you haven't seen it, he asked if you can apply to multiple fellowships, and the answer is absolutely yes. As a matter of fact, when you apply for and then you receive those awards, that makes you even more competitive for other fellowships. So we've had students that have been NSF fellows. I think Dr. Pitts, you also had the Ford Fellowship, or you were
honorable mention yeah.
For Ford Fellowship. So yes, you can apply. Now, there may be instances where you can't receive funding from 2 fellowships simultaneously. There's some regulations about that. But even if you don't get the money from both, you can still list both as you being a winner of those fellowships. And that just makes you even more marketable for future funding. And then let's see. Ayana had a question. Did you have a mentor in the process of applying? If anyone wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I can actually quickly start there. And yes, absolutely. And I wouldn't think about one mentor. I would think about multiple mentors. We have multiple dimensions of who we are, and you need a mentor for each one of those. And it's really hard to, sometimes it's hard to identify who a mentor is. I sum this up as anybody who can give you advice on where you'd like to be. And so, I mean, I've got white, black, yellow, orange, blue, and possibly pink mentors in different places. And sometimes that, well, a lot of the times that's very beneficial because you need multiple different perspectives to help you solve some of the complex issues you might face, right? Some of the difficult decisions you need to make. One person may have one view, and then you ask two other people, and they may challenge what the first person told you. So identify mentors. I mentioned Dr. Lima. Again, I don't know how involved she is with the program, but she has a wealth of knowledge about fellowships. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. All right, and there's also a question for Paris. You briefly explained applying to graduate programs while at LSU. What resources did you use here that you think propelled you in your program?
Okay, so one thing, okay, I applied during the fall semester, and I also graduated during the fall semester. So that in itself was crazy, having to make sure you graduate and get into grad school at the same time. But I just want to remind you that just like everything else, it takes a village. And just remember that the people that you are working with at LSU, like they want to see you succeed. Two of the people that had the most influence, Miss Melissa and Miss Gretchen, are in this call right now. That's who I went to. I went to my PI for help, my mentor in lab. I even went to my best friends that, you know, could read over my personal statement. I went to Mr. Joe Givens and McNair Scholars. Anybody is willing to help you. Everybody wants to see you succeed. So just know that like it does take a village, and don't be afraid to reach out for help. Reach out for that help that will help you with your personal statement. Even if you have to just work on your interview. Like I used to always, so I was in McNair Scholar, and the grad assistant in there, Derek, I would go in his office and literally ask him, please just interview me. I'm gonna voice record it so I can hear what I'm saying, because I can explain better than, like, I can explain my ideas better than writing it down. Like it comes out when I'm explaining it. So just that, and being able to listen to my recording and write that for my personal statement, that helped tremendously. So reach out for help, and also know yourself, know what help you actually do need, so that you can tell them exactly what you need. Because even if they can't help you in that one specific area, they know someone else that can help you. So it definitely takes a village. And just with that, just be mindful of time. I know I probably aggravated my help a lot because I'm a last minute person, but don't be afraid to reach out for help.
And I do want to just add one quick thing. One of the things that hadn't been discussed here is this idea of networking. So one of the things, as Paris just mentioned, is that if the mentor doesn't know a particular piece of information, they may know somebody who does. One of the things I've found is how small the academic community actually is. Although there are hundreds of R1 institutions in the US, people everywhere I've been, there's been somebody who has known somebody at a place that I've had just come from. And so I can tell you, when I joined Purdue, people were saying, oh, do you know Professor so-and-so in the IE program at LSU? And I'm like, yeah, that was my undergrad professor. And they said, oh, we were in grad school together. So don't underestimate the power of connections, of networking. And yeah, and they may be able to introduce you to, they may be your foot into the door in terms of getting into some of these grad schools, and getting your your name recognized for some of these prestigious fellowships. Do not underestimate some of your mentors, your full professors who got a ton of connections and can help you get into the door.
That is an excellent point, Dr. Pitts, an excellent point. And even those connections can serve as recommenders. I know students who were interested in graduate programs and they let their mentor know it was a phone call situation. I have a great student who would be great for your program. And just like that, it was a put in your application, we want you to come here. That can happen. And so definitely cultivate those relationships, because you never know what could come of that. You could very well have someone be that advocate that you need, or they can help you gain access to resources that you otherwise may not have been made aware of. So thank you for that tidbit as well, Dr. Pitts. Colin asked, are there tips for current undergraduate juniors in regards to staying on track for graduate school? He says, I might be mistaken, but it seems like most graduate schools give out information primarily for current undergraduate seniors because they'll most likely attend graduate school next spring or next fall. So in other words, is there anything juniors could be doing right now to be proactive until they become seniors? This is a great question, Colin. So anyone want to take that question? Paris.
Please, please, please consider doing an RU. Just
Yes.
Please, just like Daniel said, like research experience. Please consider doing an RU. I did an RU the summer after my junior year. It did but I would have needed to take summer classes that summer to graduate on time, May 2020. But in the end, I'm very glad that I did the research experience and just graduated a semester late, because out of all of the people who interviewed me, they all asked about the research experience at an RU, and they were like, wow, you're from Louisiana, but you spent the whole summer in Boston. Like, you ventured out, you took that leap to go to literally put yourself completely out of your comfort zone. Like, how was that? So that will really set you apart. So that's one thing you can stay on track with. And then another thing is just contacting these biomedical science programs and, you know, getting some information about them. If you can present your research at a conference, that's great too, because it's funny because I learned about WVU at my first time at Abercrombs as a sophomore in college. And I met a PI over here that basically talked about just how amazing WVU is and the interdisciplinary studies. And that stayed on my mind until I was ready to apply to grad school. And I actually talked to that same exact PI in my interviews. I was like, I actually talked to you. I talked to you about WVU, and it stuck in my mind this whole time. So getting out to conferences if you can, and doing an RU, please, it is an amazing experience. You build lifelong friendships. One of my friends from my RU was actually applying to LSU for grad school and was like, hey, do you know this PI? And I was like, of course I know this PI. And I was able to contact him with that PI and let her know that, hey, this is a student. He is a great person. He is a great hard worker, just truly intelligent, intellectual, just amazing person. And you build those connections. So definitely.
Definitely. That is great advice, Paris. And in addition to that, she talked about those conferences. So I dropped the Abercrombs link in there, but there are a ton of national conferences that you can attend. But I will say Abercrombs in particular, if you are in the biomedical sciences, that is the conference to be at. It's for minorities in biomedical sciences. And what I will say is when you get there, it's mind blowing. There are representatives from everywhere. And you can also gain like waivers for applying for graduate school. So as a junior, if you go to that conference, that can be very helpful in applying because you can get application, waivers for that. And then in addition to that, we talked about fellowships. So Colin, as a junior, go ahead and identify some of the fellowships you want to apply for. And when you see workshops or different tips to kind of help you craft your personal statement and apply for those fellowships, you can start working on your application now. NSF will put out the information for theirs next year, but it's not going to deviate that much from this year. So you already kind of know what components are required. You can start working on your personal statement because you don't want to have to juggle that your senior year and apply for schools and, go to class and take tests in addition to applying. So you can start that application right now as a junior. I tell students, and we used to try to have our students be done by the summer of their junior year. So when your senior year comes, you're pretty much fine tuning, making tweaks, and submitting applications at that point, both for graduate study and also for any fellowships you decide to apply to. All right. Anybody else have a question?
Melissa, I just want to add one thing.
Yes,
Since
go ahead, Dr.
COVID,
Scott.
we've seen a surge in virtual open houses that all
Yes.
these graduate programs have been providing. This is a great way that you can get a sneak peek in so many universities and graduate programs without paying a penny or even have to go to a conference. So I would say try and maximize as many of those virtual open houses that you can.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Snyder. That is an excellent point. Excellent point. And there are some that are even tailored for juniors. There are specific programs that reach out specifically for junior students, and you can participate in those. And as things start to open up, you can also look for the ones, and they will invite junior students out to the school as well. And so thank you for that point, Dr. Schneider. Anybody else? All right, this has been great. Y'all, I'm just like so excited about this information. The fact that this has been recorded, it's going to be out there for those to see. So definitely, if you didn't get to take as many notes as you would have liked, you can definitely get the recording. We'll be posting that soon. But, just some of the takeaways that I got from this, there's so many. But, we start off by talking about, just knowing what's important to you, establishing those values. So that when you start making your selection about choosing the right mentor, because that's important, developing relationships and reaching out to grad students to kind of get a feel for the culture. Also, I heard, looking at the mission statements of the schools, the colleges, the departments in terms of how they, their thoughts on diversity and inclusion, right? Also building community, joining organizations, saying yes to those social activities, saying yes to yourself, right? Making sure that you have that work-life balance and that you schedule time to do the things that are important to you. And we talked about saving for retirement, right, man? That is a huge tip. Who would have thought? Start saving early, right? And knowing what it entails. Don't give water to negative seeds. I heard a lot of these Dr. Pitts' quotes, man, and then you guys talked about, connections and not underestimating the power of connections, in addition to all of the nuggets and the details about what you need in order to successfully apply. I think you guys have gained a lot. Definitely come back next Friday, same time. And we will talk more about this. It'll be more of an informational, but I from what you got today, you guys have gotten a lot. And so I just want to thank Dr. Treva Brown, Leo Fontaine, Daniel De Jesus, Dr. Brandon Pitts, and last but certainly not least, the new kid on the block, Miss Paris Taylor. Thank you guys. Thank you, PAC Models, for putting this on. As I'm saying, PAC Models outside of PAC, like I'm outside of PAC Models. But anyhow, but thank you for putting this on. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. But right now, Dr. Marco has dropped a link in the chat. And if you would please fill out the survey. You guys, we do these webinars based on feedback. And so we want to know your thoughts, what you liked about it, where there are areas of opportunities for growth or expansion, please let us know. So if you could take a moment and fill that out. And again, if you want to know what PAC Models is up to, these are the types of things that the center will offer, the resources that will be out there. Definitely go to our website. That should be in the chat as well, lspacmodels.org. There we go. You can also follow us on social media. And with that, we want to thank you guys for coming out. Thank you again. Huge thank you to our panelists. You guys are amazing. And I'm just so excited to see everything that you all are doing. And I want to say as well, just to reiterate, get involved with the center. So everybody on this webinar, you can be involved, whether it be as a mentee or as a mentor. And so please go to the website to get more information in that as well. But we would love to have you join us so that we continue this important work of reaching students and making sure that people have access to what they need to be successful.